Today, we dive into all things cooking classes, including deciding on your subject, how to teach the class itself, and, of course, the best ways to sell it. Next on Makin Bacon. Hey there, I'm Jason Logston, and this is Makin Bacon. We're all about helping you serve your fans, grow your income, and get the most out of your blog. Today's episode is brought to you by my very own Self-Publishing 101 course. The average home cook owns almost 50 times more printed cookbooks than PDF cookbooks. So why are you limiting yourself? With the advent of print-on-demand companies like Amazon KDP and Ingram Spark, it's now easier than ever to become your own publisher. But if you don't know what you're doing, you can waste not only your time, but also your money. After publishing 15 cookbooks, including a top 10 cookbook on Amazon, I know publishing, especially self-publishing, and I want to share my expertise with you. That's where my video course comes in, stepping you through the entire self-publishing process so you can get your printed cookbook up for sale on Amazon without making any mistakes. You can check it out now at makethatbacon.com/publishnow. Now, on to the show. As bloggers, we often focus so much on building out our websites and social media accounts, hoping for ad revenue. But we often forget there are other sources of income out there. One of the ones with the biggest potential is teaching cooking classes. But it can be intimidating figuring out where to get started. Luckily, today's guest is the perfect person to help us out. She is the founder of Hidden Rhythm, a culinary marketing agency. And through her signature program, Cooking Class Business School, she helps culinary pros create and market online cooking classes and memberships so they can unlock more freedom, flexibility, and fulfillment in their lives. She also hosts the weekly podcast, Experiential Table. Can't wait to learn from today's guest, Cynthia Samanian. Cynthia, welcome to Makin Bacon.
Thanks so much for having me, Jason.
I'm really excited to dive into cooking classes. It's something that I've done a few times and enjoyed doing, but I like to start off every episode by asking, what's it like around your dinner table on a typical day?
Oh, that's a great question. So around our dinner table, we're eating later and later these days. So I have an 11-month-old and another one on the way, due in just, I don't want to say a few months, more than a few months. So I'm always telling my husband, we have to eat earlier. We have to eat earlier. And we're eating at like 9 p.m. every night. But right now it's quiet because our baby sleeps well. But I think it's going to get pretty loud around the dinner table pretty soon here.
You're enjoying the calm before the storm when the new one is there.
Yep, absolutely.
I can relate to the struggle with eating later and later. My wife's schedule, she works at CBS Sports, and it's, especially at certain times of the year, it's like she works until 8 or 9, and if we want to have dinner together, then we're eating at 8:30 or 9:30 when she gets home, and it's everything you read is like, you should eat early. It's like, but I kind of like having family dinner,
Yeah, that's the thing. We like to eat together. My husband is French American. My background is Persian. Our cultures both have food at the center of it, so it's important that we sit down and eat, but sometimes it's like 9:30 when we're done and I'm like, oh my gosh, I could fall asleep at the dinner table right now.
Are there any Persian dishes or ingredients that you think more cooks should know about and kind of learn about?
Oh, that is a great question. Well, it's so funny because I just through my work have talked to people about Persian food, and it's interesting what they know of the cuisine, which is the tahdig, the crispy rice from the bottom of the pot. Everyone knows tahdig, but I think some of the ingredients that are still pretty unknown in Persian cooking, I mean, we have these spice blends that you just can't find here. I mean, there are a few. I live in Oakland, California, and we have a great spice shop here called Oaktown, and they actually have the spice blend. It's called Advieh, and it's kind of like a 7-spice, but it's so good, and you add it to stews, and it just has this complex flavor that you can't create with anything else. So I think some of those spice blends will really be popular. Also dried lime, that is a key ingredient, and I'm starting to see those become more and more popular at mainstream grocery stores. So it's fun to see those ingredients in the aisles, but I think we still have a long way to go in getting people to use them.
I love different ingredients like that, especially spice blends that add such complexity to dishes that take things in different directions than we're used to from my general American palate. It's always fascinating to me.
Yeah.
So I want to dive into cooking classes. I've done a few myself. both in person and virtually, and it's something I'm always exploring. So I'm looking forward to learning from your expertise. What do you think the main benefits are for food bloggers of getting into teaching cooking classes?
Absolutely. So I would say, especially online, and that's where I specialize, is really helping culinary pros build out their online cooking class business. One of the biggest benefits, Jason, is really the ability to teach anyone in the world from your home kitchen. And I think this really resonates with people who have done in-person events. My background is all about like in-person culinary events. I did a lot of that for years before doing what I do now. And while those events are awesome and nothing really replaces that in-person face-to-face connection, you're limited in who you can reach. So just, and your listeners know this. I mean, you have food blogs that can reach anyone in the world, and that's what makes it so powerful. You can connect people across the globe. Online cooking classes adds another element to it. Now you're actually interacting with them in a live teaching space, and they're interacting with each other beyond, say, the comment section of your blog. So it's really powerful in terms of building connection, deepening the community you have, expanding the community as well. And of course, there's the financial benefit to it. My students are generating like meaningful income through teaching online, especially those who have audiences already, and they're finding another way to monetize their community, which is fantastic. And then we also have some who have gone the corporate class route, which we can talk more about later.
I love that concept of reaching people all around the world. That was definitely a big benefit for me. We just recently did a class that was a cocktail demo, and we had a bunch of people from our community, and we had people, for joining us from Australia and from South America, and people that they would never fly anywhere to, spend an hour with us. Like they will sometimes go to the 3-day conference that we host, but they're not going to go for an hour. But online, you can serve all these people and really connect with them so much better. Why do you think there is more of a connection when you are cooking with someone?
Oh my goodness. I mean, I think we all can agree, like food is that medium that just breaks down barriers. I mean, I experienced that growing up. My parents immigrated to the US from Iran during the revolution in '79, and they landed in, of all places, Jason, North Dakota. Okay, so they landed in North Dakota with barely any English, and it was through food, through inviting friends over for kebab and rice dishes that they built their community. And so that's just one story. I know everyone kind of has a story similarly where it's like food was that thing that connected them to maybe people they normally wouldn't cross paths with. And so I think that's still why cooking with someone is this powerful experience, because you're engaging in something together. You're not just talking about something, you're actually doing it. And it breaks the ice because, I mean, I think we've all been in those situations where, we're kind of like shy, we're nervous, like, oh, what do we say? What do we do? Whether it's in an in-person class, but the minute the ingredients come out and the knives start chopping, it's like, okay, we're doing this. And back in my events business that I used to have before, working with food brands, we always would encourage our brands to do these experience-driven events where people were doing things, because when people are doing things, making things, rolling their sleeves up, they're more likely to remember the experience and have a positive association with you and your brand. And as a culinary instructor, you're a brand. Bloggers are brands, of course. You all know that. So why, there's no better substitute for doing something with your community rather than talking at them or, other forms of media that exist.
Yeah, I feel like there's a shared experience that you have when you're doing the same thing that someone else is doing and you're really working together doing it.
Yes.
And then there's all this talk about authenticity as bloggers and opening up to your audience. And I feel like people get nervous about, how much do I open up? How much do I not? And I feel like inviting people into your kitchen in a very controlled manner, like you only see of my kitchen what I want you to see, and I can put the dog in the other room if I want, but it's a lot more intimate than it is just writing a blog post. And I feel like that can contribute some to it as well.
Absolutely. It's controlled chaos, I call it, right? It's like what you see in this frame. I mean, right now to the left of this frame, I've got a messy playpen. I've got a lot going on behind the camera, but yeah, it's true. And that's the other thing too is, and something that I remind my students of in my program is that when your community is signing up for these classes and they turn their cameras on, they're letting you into their world. And that's kind of a scary, vulnerable place to be in, especially if you're cooking with a blogger that you followed for years or a chef that you respect and admire, and you're looking at your kitchen like, okay, I hope it looks decent. So there's some vulnerability there that I think we have to respect on both sides. And it is what makes it a much more personal experience, even more so than maybe going to a cooking school where everything is perfect and laid out for you. I mean, when like you're essentially in everyone's homes and they're in yours when you're doing this online.
I never really thought about it from that flip side of that. You know, they are also letting you into their homes, and you're like, that is a gesture on their side that I think brings a lot of people closer together.
Absolutely.
So if someone's listening, they're like, I'm kind of interested in doing a cooking class, but what should it be on? What subject? Like, what advice do you have for people that are just like, I want to do one, but I blog about a lot of stuff. How do I narrow this down?
Yes. So the number one piece of advice that I tell my community, they are so sick of hearing me say it, but I don't care. I'm just going to keep saying, I'm sure, Jason, there are things that you say over and over again, and you're like, I'm going to keep saying it. It's to focus on a niche. You got to focus on a niche. And I think, you know, it's not just in the online cooking class space, especially in the food space, no matter what you're doing online, right? I'm sure bloggers have heard this too. You've got to focus on a niche because it is such a crowded space. And, you know, I have some students that are like, well, you know, so-and-so cooks everything under the sun and teaches classes and sells out. Like, that's great. They have a massive audience and they started building that audience 10 plus years ago, right? So a lot of it depends on where you are and the audience you already have. Most of my students have blogs, but it, you know, isn't their primary source of income, and they are just kind of all over the place around what it is they want to teach because they have so many interests. So my advice is to focus on a niche, and there are different ways to think about a niche. I think one part of it is who you want to teach. Is there a certain, not necessarily like age demographic, but there are different ways to kind of slice and dice an audience, right? So are you drawn to a certain type of person, a certain type of mindset that someone may have? Like there are people who, for example, are, you know, the example I use often is like college grads, right? College grads who want to go vegan. Like that is a niche, right? And you could teach them a bunch of different things. Or you could focus on the actual, you know, what you're teaching them to do. So maybe you want to teach vegan sushi to everyone under the sun. That's still pretty niche, right? So there's different ways to think about it. I think one element, in addition to kind of who you're teaching or what you're teaching or the combo of both, is what I call your unique brand story. And that's actually when you look in to figure out your niche. Oftentimes people are like, let me go do the market research. Let me survey a bunch of people. And, you know, you can find a survey, you can find a poll that's going to give you the answer to whatever you want. And you can skew it however you'd like, right? So at the end of the day, I'm like, you know what your niche is actually inside you. It's based on your experiences, your passion, your skill set, your story. And if you do enough digging, that will come out. And that's where we actually start in my program. We start with niche, and we start with figuring out deep inside, like, what is that thing that you were meant to teach? And then we go from there.
I love that idea of, you know, looking kind of inside, and I'm a big proponent of like belief-based niches, you know, that going beyond just that, you know, what are you teaching? And I like your example of the college grads, and it's like getting even more granular. Like, do they want to go vegan because they object to the industrial agricultural system? Do they want to go vegan because for health reasons?
Yeah.
Do they want to do it because it's less expensive, you know, in some cases? Like, because you can hit all of those in very different ways and have other content that's going to support it that those groups might not necessarily care about depending on their reasoning.
Exactly. Yeah. We talk about that in terms of what we call like the psychographics, right? So thinking beyond just, you know, gender, age, geography. I mean, those are such superficial levels of, you know, defining your audience. But yeah, I love the examples you shared. I mean, why would someone go vegan? There are so many different reasons and beliefs, and you could create a whole culinary series on each of those and have them be very, very different.
So someone narrows it down a little bit. They say, okay, I want to do, this college grads that are going vegan. That's my niche. I've been writing about it. Like, I know my niche now, but I have, 400 recipes on my blog. What do I specifically teach them in a class? Like, how big do I go? How small do I go? Kind of, how do I narrow it down to one or two things that I'm good at out of everything that I do?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I mean, and I have to say, what a luxury to have those recipes. I know that it takes time and work. I've had like 3 food blogs. Started, ended, right? 3 different food blogs, 3 different names, like been there and done that. I have so much respect for food bloggers because I know how much work it goes into creating those recipes. So I will say, if you are sitting on 400 recipes, like you're well on your way to creating a cooking class side business that is going to be much, much easier than someone who doesn't have those recipes to start with. So that's the good news. But now you've got to go through them, right? And so I think part of it is understanding where you want to start with your audience, right? So there are different types of offers you can create. So I talk about kind of this a la carte version, which is just a one-off class. You could do a series of classes, like a 6-week cooking series. We're going to cook every Monday evening, or you could do a membership, right? And for people who have never taught before, I advise them to start with an a la carte, get that experience of teaching a live class, see how it goes. And then a series is also really great if you are trying to help someone build habits. So, a one-off class could be good if you just want to do like a fun, we're going to cook some pastas from the Italian Riviera, whatever, fine. But if you actually wanted to, say, teach someone how to make pasta from scratch and try, to make 5 different types, or if you wanted to help this college student go vegan and you wanted to give them the skills to do that so that they could actually, carry that through after your class, then like a series is a great way to do that. So there are different formats when it comes down to actually narrowing what recipes you teach. That's where you can look at the data and maybe see like what's the most popular, what you think would be the most engaging and interesting to teach, because there are some recipes out there that don't make good recipes for classes. Like one example that comes to mind is like someone I know was doing a cooking class, and she was focusing on, I don't remember the name of the dish, but it was Vietnamese cuisine, and the ingredient list was just like 2 pages, Jason. And while that may be okay for a blog, if you really have someone who's interested in that and whatever, for an online cooking class, it might take the full hour just to talk through the ingredient list. So there are different nuances based on your niche and also based on the skill level of your students too. So if you're teaching advanced people who like want that really like extra crazy ingredient list and they want to spend time with you talking about it, that's one thing. But for the most part, you've got to meet your people where they are.
So I have a question about longer term cooking foods. What's a good way to handle classes around that? My background is sous vide cooking, so some of them are 72-hour cooks. People that do braising can run into that, or even roasting when it's 1 to 2 hours. Smoking, niches, like that can be 8 to 10 hours. How do you recommend approaching a class like that kind of has a big chunk of non-active time?
Yeah, that's a great question. We have some people in my program who are bread bakers, and they have to deal with that as well. So there are a few ways to think about it. One is doing a demo style class, which is you walking through the process, and you would have your sous vide prep at the multiple stages, and people are watching. Now, demos aren't necessarily my favorite because they're not as interactive, right? So what we talked about at the beginning of our conversation, if people are sitting there watching, unless you're really, really good and you can give them something to do while they watch you, it's more of them kind of watching Food Network or a YouTube show versus participating. So that's the challenge there.
And the demos would be more like you put this in the oven, and then 3 hours later, through the magic of TV, we have what it looks like after 3 hours.
Exactly. And so there's a lot of that. And when I talk about online cooking classes, I my brain immediately goes towards the interactive, hands-on, everyone has their cameras on sort of model. But that doesn't mean the other side doesn't exist. In fact, a lot of people are very successful doing demo style classes where maybe their audience is commenting and they're chatting on Facebook Live or some other platform, or maybe even still Zoom, but they're not actually cooking along. So cooking along versus demo, really, really different experiences. But one other thing that you could do, and this kind of goes back to what I had talked about briefly earlier, is a series class, right? So what you could do is actually have them watch a video, have them prep something in advance, pop in for the class where you could teach them a live portion of it, right? Then they can kind of go back and, you could do like a camp almost, like meat camp. I don't know. Sous vide camp. And so you can get kind of creative with it. But I think mixing recorded content that they could watch in advance, get things started with a live component is a way to make that work. But it's very, very possible. And I think that you could still have that interactivity without it just being like a complete one-sided demo, really.
I like that idea. That's almost like a hybrid of here's a little bit of a demo. Here is, now we're going to finish it off. I've generally tried to come up with one thing that can cook sous vide during the time, because there are things that cook in like 30 to 60 minutes. And then I'll be like, and now the chuck roast that we cooked, 3 days ago that you did on your own, let's pull it out. And I try to make sure that the interesting aspects of that is what happens after it comes out. That a lot of people in my audience are like, I know how to put a piece of meat into a bag and put it in the sous vide machine. Like they get that. So it's like, okay, now that it's there, and it's actually less of a sous vide class, it's more of like, what do you do with it when it's done sous videing?
Right.
Which, has worked pretty well for a lot of my people.
Yeah. That's exactly it. It's like finding those milestones, or there's key moments in the recipe where people are going to be most interested and ready for you to teach them something. So yeah, I love that. That's great.
So you mentioned Zoom. Is that how you recommend most classes be taught? Are there other platforms that you've used or recommend? What do you suggest for people getting
That's such
into
a great
this?
question, because I'm literally going to do a live stream on this tomorrow, because the tech, I mean, it, like anything, I mean, when there's this wave of, popularity in an area, the tech quickly follows. So, while people were teaching online cooking classes before the pandemic, I think we all know that they certainly were on the rise because of the pandemic, and, they're continuing to hold steady. So these tech companies are coming out with platforms to really take Zoom head on or to build around Zoom. So there are some options out there that kind of wrap around Zoom, and they have everything from scheduling, payments, email reminders, but the teaching platform is still actually Zoom. And then there's some others who have kind of built around different technology for video. So what I will say is this: the platforms offer convenience. It comes at a price, so they will take a percentage, and it varies depending on which one you go through. But at the end of the day, I will say right now, Zoom is the interface that people are most familiar with on both sides, the instructor side and the student side. So whether you go through a platform or you decide to just hook it up yourself and get a Zoom account, which you could totally do, by the way, like you could do this yourself. I teach a DIY version in my program because, why not? You can do it. No matter which kind of way you go, I'd say right now, Zoom is still kind of the household name around it. And the thing to think about too is you want to make sure that there's as little friction as possible for your students, right? It's going to be enough for them to have to get the recipes, get the grocery list, get the groceries, get everything ready. If you force them to do a mise en place before, then they're going to have to do that, right? So tech is one other hurdle that they have to go through to take your class, then it's not going to be that great of an experience. So I will say that. And then one other thing about platforms is that they are very popular right now, and a lot of them are coming out and they're very excited to get people on board. The one thing that I tell my students and just in general, my community, is ask them about their support. Ask them about their support, because whenever you have a company growing quickly, they're excited to sign you up. But if it's, if your class is in 20 minutes and something's not working and you can't get a hold of anyone, that is going to cause an awful experience for not only you, but of course your students. So we just have to be careful around that. Whenever we work with platforms, figure out what's their support model like, because you want to make sure you and your students can get that help that they need before the classes start.
I like that everyone generally does know Zoom, and talking about saying things over and over again. One of the things that I always say is like start small.
Yeah.
And like, what is the simplest thing you can do? And I feel like use Zoom a few times, or Facebook Live if you're better at that, like whatever like platform like use that. And then if you do 4 or 5 or 10 and you're like, I really wish I had these features, then you can find a platform that has those features because you actually want them.
Exactly.
Where trying to take on something huge is so hard.
Yeah. And also the other thing that I've noticed is oftentimes people just assume that if they get the tech set up, the class is going to be great. And so they'll come to me and say, oh, Cynthia, that's cool. You teach this program and you teach all these other things, but I just want to buy that tech piece. And I'm like, okay, you know what? I'll just give that to you for free, because you're going to come back to me and say, I need to get people to my classes. I need to learn how to teach effectively, because the tech is just the tech. And if you had 2 classes side by side and one had mediocre tech, but an amazing instructor who was engaging, and the other had the best tech in the world, but a lackluster instructor, the first one would win out every single time. So I think that's the thing to remember, is the tech is designed to enable you to be your best, but you've got to do all the other work to get people there, understand what you're teaching, do that real hard grind before you actually press record or go live.
Yeah, I feel like as long as you're not like horrible quality,
Exactly.
If you do a good job teaching and you have a compelling class, people will respond to that over something that looks slick and polished and is just boring or complicated or confusing for the attendees.
Yeah, people want what's real. They want to feel like they're actually in your kitchen, and that can go a really long way. Absolutely.
The analogy I always use is that I know Christina Peters, who does the Food Photography Club, and she's a great photographer, and we're good friends. And I say, like, you could give me like a $10,000, setup, like camera setup, and you could give her like a point and shoot like disposable camera, and her photos would still be better than mine. And I'm a decent photographer, but like, she knows so much about how to do compelling photography that it doesn't matter.
Exactly.
That I have better equipment. She can just nail it anyway.
Exactly. And so many times people think that like the tech is the crutch for them, and they think if I go buy that fancy camera, then I'm going to make so much money by teaching online. And it's like, no, that's the last thing you should worry about. Use your iPhone, use what's built in. I know you've had Kathy Hester on the show before, and I've spoken with her too. And I love her approach, because she also is like, start small, build up your equipment as you start earning money to justify it.
Yep. You don't know what you need until you've done it a few times, and then you can start getting an idea if you need more or not need more, but you don't have to do it out of the gate.
Absolutely. Yep.
What are some mistakes that you see people make when they're during this cooking process outside of focusing on the tech? What are things that people should try to avoid?
Yeah, it's so funny. I actually don't talk about the tech as the mistake, but I need to add that. I think there are 4 mistakes now. You've just reminded me of one. Well, so one of them we've actually already talked about, which is assuming that a bigger audience is better. And so the flip side is really to focus on a niche. And, that comes down to what we talked about earlier, which is this idea of being able to stand out. And it's like, yes, if you could create a class that could appeal to everyone in the world, great, go for it. But that's never going to happen. And even if it did, you wouldn't break through the noise. So let's deal with the reality of the fact that things are crowded. But aside from that, a few other mistakes that I see people make often is, the first is kind of skipping to the sale. So not spending time nurturing their audience. Now, I actually don't think your listeners are going to have a problem with this one. I think this is where food bloggers really understand the value of content and relationship. But there are people who, are in the culinary space who are new to kind of this content creation work. And they think like, okay, I have classes. I'm just going to go ahead and put that link to enroll everywhere. And I might even run some Facebook ads. That's the other thing. It's like on top of that, let's run some Facebook ads to my class, which Facebook ads have a place in marketing, but running them directly to your sales page for your event is not one of them, in my opinion. So I would say a lot of people make the mistake of not investing in building their funnel, their marketing funnel, really, attracting their ideal student, engaging them with content, their email newsletter, right? Whether or not they have a blog, it doesn't matter, but they've got to show up in their world somehow. And then getting to a place where, yeah, here's my class, go enroll. And by then, most of the work has been done, right? You've already built that relationship. You've helped them understand what your class can do for them, what problems it can solve for them. So that big chunky middle of the funnel is where I think a lot of people, I don't want to say get lazy. I think a lot of people don't know that that's where you should be investing more of your time. And the other mistake is related to that, and that's not investing in your email list. I'm a big proponent, of email marketing. I use it in my own business. It's helped me in so many ways. And I think a lot of people are dependent on Instagram and Facebook and other platforms that could disappear quickly. And if you've been in the business long enough, you've seen those shifts happen. So making sure that people understand that you don't really own your audience unless you have that email address and the value of that email address. So I teach a lot about email marketing within my program. They come in thinking they're going to learn how to teach online cooking classes, but really it's a course on how to build out this marketing engine that they could use no matter what they end up teaching. That's kind of the secret behind it.
So that big middle of the funnel, as you called it, I think that's a great concept of looking at it that way. What is some good content you can put there to either grow trust or to establish your expertise that is, conducive to supporting selling a cooking class down the road? Because I know it can shift depending on what your long-term offer is. So what have you found that's good for cooking classes?
What's interesting is there are a few ways to go about it. And I teach my students this idea of content buckets and how, you can either inspire, relate, educate. There's a fourth one. But the point is, you can kind of hit each of those buckets based on the content that you share. And so often we think that we have to be sharing recipes constantly or sharing tips constantly. And where I see a lot of opportunity, even in emails, is to share personal stories, is to share stories that really connect you with your audience. And so while it might be a story about that time you got the wrong ingredient for a recipe at the grocery store, it may turn into a conversation around something else. And I know personally that the emails I've sent where I am talking about something that's not even related to my business, but I tie it back to it in a way, it's not totally out of left field, but I do share something a bit more personal, not super vulnerable, but just a little, one layer below, it gets the most engagement. People respond, they reply, and they feel like, I'm just a normal person like they are. So I think when it comes to content, recognizing that, with an online cooking class, people are going to invest time and money to be there with you, right? It's different than going to a blog and reading a blog. They're actually going to show up for you for this 1 hour time slot or 90 minutes or 2 hours and spend time with you. So they kind of want to make sure they like you. And right, bloggers know how to do that. And clearly, through content, know how to tell stories. And so that's where I'm your audience has a leg up. But, there are people who are new to this idea of talking about things outside of just the recipe and the how-to. So I would say those are the obvious things to cover, but going another level deeper and sharing, it doesn't have to be highly personal, but just something that's a little bit more than the expected content. I think that can go a really long way.
I think it's funny that you talk about that with personal experiences. Someone from my mastermind group, Shelly, does post-surgery nutrition and keeping people on the path and maintaining health afterwards. And she talks about her biggest email response that she got was she got hit by a tornado recently. And so she had a whole email about like, we lost our roof. And like, so, all of us have these storms that happen in our lives. And here's how you can like weather the storms and the foundation. And she like, her email wasn't about the storm, but it was like based on the storm and using a storm analogy, and shared that experience, which was a personal experience. But like you're saying, it's not this like, here's pictures of my baby experience. It's just something that happened to me. She tied it into our business, and she gets more response from that email than all the other emails that she's put out there.
Absolutely. And I think there's this fear that sending too many emails is spammy, and we don't want to spam people. And I get it. We've all been on the other end when we get those emails that are just so annoying. We can't wait to unsubscribe. But I don't unsubscribe to emails that I enjoy reading. It's plain and simple, right? So I think part of it's just getting over this fear of people unsubscribing and understanding that, okay, well, if they do, then they're not right for you. And that's great, right? We're niching down even more. So there's a little bit of like the sense of rejection when someone unsubscribes, or this idea that, oh, maybe we're like spamming people's inboxes, and we hate being on the other end of that. But if you are sending quality content, then you actually like should not feel like you're being spammy. And another thing, just a quick tip, is that a lot of my students, when they show me their email newsletters, they're like, well, Cynthia, I spent so much time working on this, and I can't believe you want me to send like one a week. And I look at it and I'm like, oh my goodness. I just had this conversation with a student of mine earlier. And I said, this is 4 weeks of emails in one. Right? This concept of an email newsletter, I don't even like that phrase, but I say it because we know what that means for the most part. It's not like everything but the kitchen sink that you put into it, right? Each of those blocks that she was showing me could have been its own email. And she was wondering why people weren't clicking on the links. I'm like, because you've got 20 links. Like, what do you want them to click on? So I think we've got to move away from this idea that emails have to be these long, lengthy, content-filled beasts, when really you can keep it short to the point, punchy, and send an email once a week and not have to like go crazy having to create all that content.
It's definitely something I struggle with. I am known for my very long information-packed emails, but it's something that is on my to-do list to work on, but I have not.
I mean, if you can keep up with it, more power to you. But it's like when people are struggling to be consistent, I'm like, well, take that email and divide it into 4 pieces. Now you're good for a month. So.
Yeah, most of mine are built into autoresponders, I only have to do it once, and then everyone will eventually get it down the road.
There
so at
you
least
go.
It's not a weekly thing I need to do. I can sit down and put out 5 or 10 of them, and then
exactly, yeah. I mean, that's like next level. That's the way to go. Automation all the way. I love that.
So how has COVID changed like the cooking landscape? I mean, obviously it's had a huge impact. How do you think it's changed it both in kind of like the last year and a half, but also maybe the next, 3 to 5 years?
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I think it's clear that this last year and a half, more people have been in the kitchen than ever before. I mean, I think we all experienced the sourdough bread baking phenomenon. I actually got into sourdough the November before COVID, and I was obsessed with it. And I was like, I'm going to bake bread all the time. And then I couldn't find flour, and I got really annoyed. I was like, this entitled new bread baker, thinking, where's my bread flour? And I haven't baked bread in a long time since. So, but I'll just say, I mean, yeah, COVID did have some silver linings, and one of those silver linings was people spending more time in the kitchen, just slowing down a bit. And not everyone. I mean, I think it's still a luxury to be able to say that. I think there are people who, were struggling to get by. And so for them, it wasn't like this, beautiful, idyllic kitchen scene that they have where they're like, oh, I'm going to like bake some bread for fun. I mean, it certainly was tough for a lot of people, but I do think it did bring more people into the kitchen who normally were eating takeout or eating out at restaurants, that sort of thing. So I think we've seen a nice shift to home cooking again. I think moving forward, I mean, I'm curious what 3 to 5 years will be from now, but I will know in the short term, I mean, this summer, like entertaining is just going to be, I think, on fire. I think people are so excited to open up their homes again, to have friends over. I mean, we recently just had friends over for the first time since before COVID, and our first non-family members to come over, and it was just awesome. And we're like, oh, we missed this. So I think we're going to see a trend of content, and I, encourage my students to teach classes around entertaining and kind of nothing new. I'd say it's kind of just going back into, what we had been doing before, but maybe certain things are more emphasized. So this idea of gathering, whether it's simple or more formal. I think the holidays this year are going to be really big because people are going to go all out. And so I think we're going to see, more content around those types of contexts. 3 to 5 years from now, I don't know. I mean, I want to believe that more people are cooking every single day. Like I believe the world is a better place the more people know how to cook. That's just my point of view. So I hope that grows.
I think so many more people understand the technology too. Like my parents and my in-laws, any of them would now sign up for a online Zoom class, where 2 years ago they'd be like, I don't know what that means, and I don't know technology, like I don't have a Zoom device, or they'd say something like that.
Yeah.
And now they're like, oh yeah, we know how Zoom works, like we can do that.
Yeah, I mean, the online cooking class space, I didn't even talk about that, but you're absolutely right. I think, before COVID, this technology existed and there were people out there trying to teach online, and it just wasn't gaining traction because, people had alternatives, and it wasn't something that they thought was even really a great experience. Like, oh, I don't even think I could do that. I couldn't learn to cook online on it. What's Zoom? I've never heard of Zoom, right? But now you're absolutely right. I mean, the barrier has been taken down, and people understand that it is possible. And even as people kind of go back to traveling and seeing each other, and we're not all locked up in our homes, one of the things that doesn't change is the fact that we are all still going to be geographically dispersed, right? Like that was before COVID as well. So if you have a college daughter who's studying abroad in Rome and you want to do an online cooking class, like you could do it, right? I know my, classmates of mine from school were all over the country. We can do it. So sometimes we forget that we've actually all always kind of been spread out. And so there are a lot of use cases for online cooking classes going forward. And then of course the corporate class space, which is super interesting because companies are starting to announce their policies for employees coming back to the office and whether they're working remotely or what. And what we're seeing more and more is there's a lot of flexibility, and there are going to be people who are, not going to be going into the office, or they have teams all over the world, which once again existed before COVID. So now it's like, right, there's some things that have been this way before, but now we have another way to bring teams together, to bring families together. And it's something that people are more willing to try because of the experience we all went through since March 2020.
I'd love to dive a little more into the concept of corporate classes and kind of what that looks like from a teaching or just a conceptual perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. So corporate classes are where we're seeing a lot of traction because, one, companies have money. So if you think about the process for filling up a class, if you wanted to get, let's say, 20 people in a class, which is a great number, by the way, you could have 20 people paying $50. And this would be, say, like a public class, right, that you're just doing. So $1,000 there. Or you could talk to one manager at a team within a company who is going to bring their team of 20 to your class, and you could charge more than $50 because you're creating an experience custom for them. It's a team building experience. So, from my light research, a lot of companies, especially those in tech, consulting, finance, have a budget of around $100 per person per quarter. Right. And they're looking to do usually one team building event a quarter. So if you could be that one event, things could work out really well for you. And if that company is Google, then you might get referred to another team and then another team. So there are some network effects there at play, which are really, really great. But the idea with corporate classes is that it's a little bit different than public classes. If you think about a public class, you have, 20 people signing up because they are so excited to learn how to make vegan sushi. That's always my go-to example. But with a corporate class, this person's hiring you because they need to do something fun. They need to celebrate a milestone. They need to maybe there's a new hire that they've got to orient into the team. And they're kind of doing it because they need to do something. And it's like your class is that vehicle for connection. Not all 20 people are probably going to care about what you're teaching, which is the tough part from a culinary perspective, because you're like, I want everyone to be so excited about this thing we're doing. But it's pretty cool that through your experience, they're bonding and connecting, and it has a different vibe than a public class because people know each other, they're cracking jokes. It's different. But one of the things I encourage my students to do is create an experience around it, package it as an experience, because experiences allow you to charge more than, say, a class. And with that, you've got to add some other elements to it. You can't just call it something else, but companies are willing to pay for experiences. And I have my sister-in-law, she tells me all the classes that they've done at their company, and it's so fascinating, the range that they have. But just last week, they did a pasta making class with an Italian grandma in Italy, and here we are well into COVID, and they're still going strong. So there's a big opportunity there for sure, especially if you have an interesting niche. Like a cuisine, what I've seen work well is like global cuisines. So people who are focused on say Sri Lankan cuisine, or, cuisines that may not be as familiar to everyone, here, whether it's in the US or Canada or wherever people listening live. Those unique cuisines, I think Persian food, for example, those are kind of the fun cuisines that make people say, oh, that would be interesting and unique and different. So
you talked about making them experiences. What are some things that bloggers, the teachers can add on to make something more of an experience, and like you said, not just a normal class?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question, Jason. There are some different things to think about. So one is understanding, when you teach, you're not just teaching a recipe, but you've got to do a little bit more. So telling the story behind it, infusing some sort of whether it's competition or trivia or, something that gets people engaged beyond the cooking. Because like I said, there may be people in there who aren't super into the cooking, or they don't feel comfortable. Maybe they're nervous. They don't want to look bad. So you've got to give people a way to engage beyond just the recipe. And that's a nice crutch for people who want to participate, but are a little bit nervous about the cooking side of things. So we've seen, for example, trivia work really well, getting people to dress up based on the theme. So if you're doing Hawaiian food, I don't know, get people in their Hawaiian shirts and leis, send leis to each team member. There's different ways you can go about it. I generally discourage my students from sending perishable goods to students. I feel like getting into the meal kit delivery business is not profitable for anyone. So I wouldn't go down that route, but there is an opportunity if you're a really crafty instructor, you could create some great kits that have, cocktail shakers and, like I said, a lei or whatever, and charge a pretty good premium to get those out. Now, you may not be making a lot of profit on that, but that's kind of one piece that rounds out the experience. It makes it feel like something more than just, them hopping on Zoom and, kind of going through this cooking thing. But there are ways to do it that are tangible, intangible, and you've got to be creative. And a lot of it comes down to also how you package and sell it. You've got to give that client confidence that, you understand that this is a team building experience, and you understand the importance of engaging their team members so that they have a great time and it makes their manager look good for booking it.
Well, we've had a great conversation about a lot of higher level things, a few specifics here, but if people are listening and they're like, I really want to make this happen, I want to dive in, I want to learn a lot more about the specifics and what to do. Can you talk a little bit about your cooking class business school that can help fill them in on all that information that they need to really make this happen?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you pointed that out because I'm very much a step-by-step person. And so we threw a lot out there. It was kind of, there's a lot floating around in this episode. So if you are the type of person who really wants that step-by-step instruction, I do have my program. It's called Cooking Class Business School. And in it, I walk you through 6 recipes. I call them recipes, but they're modules. And then each recipe teaches you basically how to go from the very beginning, which is understanding your niche, really digging into your unique brand story, to building your marketing funnel, setting up your sales and promotion funnels, and then ultimately at the end, how to get the tech going and how to make sure that your students have a great experience. So that is my program. On top of that, we also have coaching calls and a community with small accountability pods. So it's a combination of the content, community, and coaching. It's a fantastic program, if I do say so myself. And that's where I spend most of my time. And I would encourage you all to learn more. So I do have a free masterclass that walks you through my 4-step framework for creating profitable online cooking classes. And in that, you'll also learn at the very end more about my program. So you can go to hiddenrhythm.com/masterclass to learn more.
Awesome. I really appreciate you coming on, Cynthia, sharing all of your expertise. I've learned a lot. I'm sure my audience learned a lot as well. So thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule and spending it with us today.
Thank you. This was so fun. I love talking to food people. It doesn't feel like work, Jason, does it?
Yeah, I very much enjoy being in this industry.
Yeah,
it's nice.
Absolutely. Thank you again.
So again, for more on Cynthia, you can head to hiddenrhythm.com or hiddenrhythm.com/masterclass, and be sure to check out her podcast as well, The Experiential Table. I know a lot of people have been on there and interviewed. It's a great podcast, so be sure to check that out. And this has been Makin Bacon. We're all about helping you serve your fans, grow your income, and get the most out of your blog. Until next time, I'm Jason Logston.